Welcome to the favorites, the podcast, part of the Volume Podcast Network. I am Chad Millman of the Action Network. We are going college football kickoff today. Let's welcome in my co-host, my companion, my compadre, my BFF, professional bettor, Simon Hunter. Hello, Simon.
Chad, we made it, brother. Tomorrow night, it's going down to 59 degrees. The crisp air. Fall is about here. Football is here. College football, kick us off. It's the best.
Well, look, NFL Week 1 is next week, but the 2025 college football season has actually started. I watched the game between Iowa State and Kansas State from Dublin the other day. So, what better time than now to welcome back in Action Network's college football experts, superstars, OGs, Stuckey and Collin Wilson, host of the wildly popular podcast Big Bets on Campus, to discuss the upcoming season. They're going to give out their favorite bets for college football week 1, which starts on Thursday, goes all the way through the special TCU UNC standalone primetime game on Labor Day. I don't know why people would be interested in the University of North Carolina's football team. Collin Stuckey. Great to see you, boys. Welcome back. Collin, how are you?
I mean, I'm doing well. My son met Stuckey for the first time the other day in Chicago at the BBOC live event, and he's a freshman in college. And he said, "I've been listening to this guy in my living room since I was 10 years old." That's how long we've been doing this. That
Scary,
just
right?
blew me away. Blew me away.
Stuckey, did that age you?
I've already been aged enough, yeah, it was not pleasure to meet him. Really good kid, and it was nice to meet a bunch of people at Joe's that showed up for the watch party. But now that was like my last breath of freedom. Now it's time to lock in from now until April after college basketball is over. So I'm excited. It's good to be back, and yeah, we have a great slate to get things started. It's nonstop college football from Thursday through Monday, and we're recording this on Monday, and yesterday was the last Sunday that we won't have any football until February. So I hope everyone enjoyed the peace and quiet, a little peace and quiet on Sunday, because every Saturday and Sunday from here on out, it's nothing but football. So I couldn't be more excited.
All right, so let's set the table for the biggest game of the biggest games this weekend. We're talking about number 1 Texas with Arch Manning going to Ohio State. The number 1 team is the underdog to the defending national champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Game is at noon Saturday. Boys, Collin, we'll start with you. Set the table for us on this game and the impact it potentially has in the upcoming season.
Well, it's a revenge game if you want to play that angle. And also, we hope that Sark doesn't start calling tosses to the outside at the goal line. But in reality, Arch Manning should cook here because the Ohio State defensive line is a major downgrade here. And you know that you want to run RPO with Arch Manning over the middle, over the guards, over the center. He's got both of the running backs back from last year. There is not a single unit for Texas that is not considered number 1 or number 2 in the nation. They have a major advantage here. And I'll let Stuckey talk about it. But Matt Patricia as a coordinator is one of the biggest downgrades I could ever make in the world. When you lose Chip Kelly and Jim Knowles and you're fielding Matt Patricia as your defensive coordinator, I mean, he's responsible for one loss on the Buckeyes schedule somewhere.
Yeah, I'm close to market. Collin got some 3. I wanted some 3. I never got around to it, which was unfortunate because that's the bet that I liked here. The under took some money too, but I think that if I had to pick who wins this game, I do think Texas wins it. But there's a lot of uncertainty at quarterback for both. I mean, for both teams, and that's the story of this entire college football season. You look at a lot of the top teams in the country, it's quarterback uncertainty. Are they going to hit at quarterback? Is it, you could go to Alabama, new starter. You could go to Ohio State, even Notre Dame. And we're going to see for the first time a lot of these kids this weekend. That's pretty much what's going to determine, who wins the national title, who gets into the college football playoff, who makes a run, is which of these top teams hit on their quarterback. And then on the flip side, which of them miss and they actually have a quarterback problem. We do have a little more certainty with Arch Manning, and he has all the tools but it's not like we've seen him be a full-time starter for a full season. So there's still uncertainty there. And then saying the quarterback from Ohio State, obviously super talented kid, but the reports in camp weren't necessarily glowing. And that's the same with Notre Dame and Carr, who won the job. So I think I feel a little bit more confident with Texas's quarterback situation going into the weekend, but certainly nothing is a given with all the uncertainty and lack of experience. Not an easy place to play, but Colin hit on it. The difference here could be just Sark versus Patricia on that side of the ball and what Texas has called up, and then the downgrade at the defensive coordinator position with Ohio State. So should be a good one to kick things off. And then, throughout the weekend, we have a Miami Notre Dame on Sunday, which I would maybe look at a first half under. The under's been taking money all summer. Field condition, there could be some weather. We got to start talking about weather again. But there could be some weather there. And Notre Dame, I mentioned Carr. There's some questions there. He didn't run away with the job. There was, 2 weeks ago, many people thought he wasn't even going to win the job. So we'll see how he performs. But their defense still should be very good. I imagine on the road at Miami, they're going to treat him with kids' gloves. They're probably going to be pretty conservative early. And then Miami's offense is going to go from arguably the best in the country last year with Cam Ward, all those receivers, to they're going to look extremely different. They're probably going to be more run heavy. Their defense should be a little better. So I imagine that game is, pretty slow and slow developing, especially in the start. I might feel more comfortable with the first half under like 24, just because if there are questions with Carr and, Notre Dame gets behind, or, one of those teams has to start throwing, you could see some mistakes. But I do think that game starts out slow. But I'm mainly just excited to see some of these young quarterbacks on these top teams and who may have hit and who didn't.
Chad, I know we're going to get to futures, but I got to know, since we touched, the Notre Dame Miami game, this Clemson LSU game, am I the sucker, Stuckey? Am I the sucker taking that -3.5 on Clemson? Or am I, again, it's all about the D-line for me. Where are you at in this game where I'm so happy and excited for how they line these schedules up? And this is another game that, to me, is just a juggernaut. Clemson LSU week 1.
Yeah, I'm lower than the market on Clemson and higher on LSU, but my big concern, it's a pretty fair line, to be honest, but my biggest concern is the LSU offensive line this season, right? You lose 4 to the NFL. There's still 2 positions that are unsettled along the offensive line. They still have oars. They still haven't decided. You might have 2 freshmen starting at tackles. There's a lot of uncertainty on that offensive line. They did bring in 2 transfers. One's going to start at center. One's going to start at guard. But that offensive line going up against Clemson's defensive line, which is one of the best in the country, and it's on the road in a hostile environment, that could be the difference. Now, if LSU's offensive line is together and they have a good showing there, that is an outstanding sign for the rest of the season, because we'll see if they have a running game. Last year, even though they had a bunch of guys who were drafted, a bunch of guys who went to the NFL, they couldn't run the ball at all. They just couldn't figure out their zone run blocking, and LSU was basically just all throwing, and they had great pass protection. So there's a chance that takes a tumble, and we're going to find out in week 1. But if this new offensive line can come together and actually provide a semblance of a rushing attack to give Garrett Nussmeier some balance, then LSU's offense, I think, would have potentially an even higher ceiling. But that's the key matchup there. On the road, week 1, you still don't even have 2 starters decided, and you're going up against a ferocious defensive line. Ultimately, everything just could crumble for Nussmeier behind that unit. But that's really what I'm watching, because it's going to tell us a lot about LSU. Doesn't mean they can't get it together later on in the season, but if it's just a disaster, I'm definitely going to pause some of my optimism on what this LSU team can do this year. And it's Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly never wins week 1. It's like it will be a storyline going into this game. You'll hear a lot about that. We saw it again last year against USC out in Las Vegas. But that's the thing that I'm worried about the most in that game.
Well, so again, before we get to futures then, because we got to get to futures and we got to get to week 1 picks. But Collin, Stuck just mentioned Nussmeier, and Clemson has Cade Klubnik, and Penn State has Drew Aller, and there's the kid in Sellers in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already seeing the hype machine working with these guys. I watch enough college football to be relatively unimpressed with every guy I just mentioned, I think except for Sellers, who probably was the most athletic and the best combination of runner and passer. The other guys just, to me, felt like dudes who have been there forever,
Mhm.
who tend to make bad throws at the worst possible time. So why all of a sudden is everyone freaking out about these guys as if they're like the second coming of great quarterbacks when they don't seem to be that given their past history?
Well, Garrett Nussmeier is an NFL quarterback arm. He is going to play and he's going to do well, in my opinion. The problem is he's not being protected. Even a stellar offensive line last year couldn't protect him, and he's got a terrible head coach that can't connect with kids anymore. If you go back and watch those SEC series on Netflix, like Brian Kelly's just this pissed off dad that kids are not connecting with. So I think Nussmeier is going to do better when he gets out of LSU. But when you talk about Cade Klubnik, I love this kid. Like I've been going and scooping his Chrome and Bowman, his Bowman Chrome auto, rookie cards out there because he has gotten better and better year over year with pressure in his face, elite numbers from big time throw to turnover worthy play. So much to where he was really carrying the Clemson offense through the playoff run last year. And I think he's going to be even better this year with a massive amount of wide receivers back that can really have some explosions. I think Klubnik is the one that people are really not talking about enough. As far as Lenora Sellers, I mean, it's truth time right now because he's lost all of the big players that are around him, the people that support him from an offensive line and from the running backs that were in the backfield. It's on him now. And really, that South Carolina offense is more like, let's just let shit break down in the trench and see what Lenora Sellers can do. And that's why you got so many good highlight reels, is because it's him scrambling around and making like, plays on the fly, which is great. But let's see what happens when he doesn't have any role players around him. But I think Klubnik is the one people need to keep their eyes on from an NFL futures perspective. I think he'll get up to Nussmeier's level from a pro talent perspective.
Yeah,
But
I think that the
but
hype, part of the reason is the hype for those guys. Sellers still has some things to work on. I mean, he's still young, but he has some things to work on from a footwork and passing perspective. But you mentioned the dual threat ability, and that's like obviously everything in the NFL these days. That's what everyone is looking for. I think Nussmeier has the most NFL ready arm. I think part of the hype is those guys really came on at the end of last year. So you saw that with Klubnik. Klubnik really struggled against upper echelon competition throughout the. I mean, he went 0-3 against the SEC last year. They averaged, I think, under 2 touchdowns per game. But against Texas, he looked really good. And the end of the year is when he started playing his best. Nussmeier had some questionable throws early in the year, but his decision making as the year went on got better. And then with Allert,
Mhm.
part of it is what I just brought up. There's experience. A lot of the other teams don't have an experienced quarterback option. So that's part of what's driving this hype is that many of these other teams have a huge question mark. A lot of them are starting young kids who haven't started before. So that's just like where you have a big edge is that you just have a returning starter with an upper echelon roster in college football. But Aller needs to get better against upper echelon competition when he's under pressure. Those top teams, those top tier teams that he's faced, he hasn't met the moment yet. We'll see what he can do this year, deciding to come back. But I think part of it is just, hey, we have the experience. And part of it is there's a lot of other teams that just don't have that luxury headed into this year. So, and that paints the picture of the national title conversation, in my opinion. Like I have Penn State power rated #1, the top team. Part of that is, hey, Aller's back. You hired Jim Knowles. You have a roster full of experience and talent. But that doesn't necessarily mean that one of these other teams will catch them. Like Penn State's probably close to where its peak is right now, unless Aller takes like a huge leap forward. But one of these other teams, if they hit on a quarterback, right? Like say if Alabama hits on the quarterback, the rest of their roster is so stacked that they could rise up. And by the time the college football playoff comes along, Penn State might not necessarily be power rated #1.
Let me say this about Allers as a generally NFL podcast for everybody listening. If he does not fix the two problems that he has, he's going to fall in the NFL draft and he ain't going to amount to anything at the next level. One, he cannot read pre-snap blitz. He cannot read what's coming at him. He has changed the play with Nick Dawkins as center multiple times and made the offensive line shift in places it didn't need to go. Plus, look at his throwaway numbers. I mean, seriously, like that's a stat. It is in the NFL. You have to be able to get rid of it, quick trigger to the sidelines. He never throws the ball away. He'd rather take a 12-yard sack. Can't throw it away. Can't detect pre-snap blitz. I mean, those are two huge problems. If he doesn't fix it, I'd be selling him on NFL draft day like crazy.
all right, boys, let's transition that into futures. Colin, you're first. Give me your best futures bet.
I like Oklahoma over 6.5, 7. I don't care what the juice is. This team is absolutely loaded. Look for a combination of offensive coordinators and quarterbacks that come together to these programs. We just saw it with Western Kentucky the other day. Well, now we've got John Mateer coming in from Washington State and his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, a real riser in the world of calling offenses in college football. I don't think we realize exactly how basement level the Oklahoma offense was last year because of all of the injuries that they had sustained. But now they have, shout out to Phil Steele. He calls their defensive line and their linebacker group the number one overall unit in the SEC. Oklahoma is loaded on defense. They now have an offense that can actually score some points here. The schedule's tough, but I mean, I'm not opposed to anyone out there looking at 25 to 1 to win the SEC. I think they are in line for some major upsets this year. I think they're in line to win Red River against Texas. I love Oklahoma's over the win total this year.
I love a Phil Steele reference. Stuckey.
Let's go with I'll mention UCF. They play this a weekday. They play Jacksonville State. They should actually roll in that game, but under 5.5. It's Alex Grinch is the defensive coordinator for Scott Frost, who comes back to UCF. He's one of the worst defensive coordinators in college football for my money. I didn't that hire to me is head scratching. And then they just named Cam Fancher the starting quarterback. That is probably a bad sign for what the quarterback room looked like. This is a guy who probably should be starting at the group of five level. I wasn't in love with all the talent they brought in. This should be a rebuilding year for UCF. So I like under 5.5. And then I mentioned Penn State before. Penn State like plus money to make the Big Ten title game. I like they might not be number one, so they might end up facing like Ohio State, who's ahead of them at that point in time. But this is a team they host Oregon in a great spot early on this season at home. Oregon coming across the country, Penn State off of a bye. I'm very low on Oregon this year. I wouldn't be shocked if Oregon missed the playoff. And I think Penn State, you'll see them at least in the Big Ten championship game.
And we have to throw a long shot out that Stuckey and I both agree on. Let's go to the MAC and Central Michigan out there to win the MAC is like 20, 25 to 1. And you say, where do you get this stuff? In the MAC, you can completely flip the conference upside down. Ask the Ohio Bobcats last year. But what Central Michigan did is they needed a new head coach, and they decided to go out and get the guy that has re-architected the Army offense and turned them into this crazy, like, triple threat option in space. Well, he's now calling the plays at Central Michigan, and no MAC defense knows how to cover the triple option. I think just because they don't have the personnel, they don't have the returning starters, it doesn't matter. I think the Central Michigan offense running the triple in space, what Army does, is going to mess up a lot of defenses in the MAC. It's going to work on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. You're going to hear a lot of chirping from us.
Stuck, what's your last future?
Yeah, I don't know how much we'll see how much you see of that in Mount Pleasant, but I did take Central Michigan. I think the first time they hired McElwain back in like 2019, they had one win the year before and then went to the MAC championship game. So yeah, you could see a enormous turnaround season to season in the MAC. There's just and all these teams are turning over. They lose all their best players. The MAC's getting worse. It's falling behind, but it'll be just as entertaining as always. Let's see. I'll throw. Let me I'll throw a couple college football playoff bets out there. Um, I played some USC to make the playoff plus 480, and I played some Texas A&M plus 240. I think Texas A&M is a really high floor. Not Marcel Reed still limited as a passer, but their rushing offensive line is going to be outstanding. Defense was a problem last year. Mike Elko said, "Look, I'm going to fix that." I trust him on that side of the ball. So if he fixes the defense and you marry that with like just a potent, powerful rushing attack, I think those two things can work together, and Texas A&M will have a shot of potentially getting to the college football playoff because you might see 3, 4, 5 SEC teams in. I already mentioned Oregon is down, so maybe USC, if Jaden Maeva hits, their defense is on the ascend after losing Alex Grinch. They might be able to take one of those Big Ten spots. And one of the reasons Texas A&M could get it, the SEC, a lot of these top teams that everyone is counting on has quarterback uncertainty. So what if Alabama doesn't hit? What if Gunnar Stockton's not the guy at Georgia? So who could be some of these teams that could benefit? At least Texas A&M has a known commodity returning starter, even though his ceiling is probably limited from a passing perspective. I think that there's a good chance that they'll be in the discussion with a game against Texas to close out the regular season. Who knows if they get that, they could get in there. So Texas A&M and USC are some shots to make the college football playoff. And then one more, LSU, if they lose to Clemson, but it's very competitive, and the offensive line actually looks okay, and they have a semblance of a rushing attack. I'll be curious. We'll be talking about that on Big Bets on Campus following week one, but I'll be curious to see what their prices look like based on if they lose that game, but they still look good. And I liked what I saw from some of the young guys at offensive line against a really good defensive line. So that's a team, another SEC team that could benefit if some of these other top teams don't necessarily hit at quarterback.
Stuck, it's you've been so good at doing this for so long now that you teed up my promo for BBOC perfectly because this is a reminder to everybody. The very best college football betting coverage anywhere is on BBOC. You need to listen to Big Bets on Campus, the BBOC podcast featuring all of Action's college football experts, including today's guest, Collin and Stuckey, the BBOC OGs. The number one ranked college football betting podcast. Get it Apple, Spotify, or the BBOC YouTube channel.
All right, let's get to it, Chad. Week one, Collin, who you got for number one first best bet?
Yeah, I just put this in the app last night. Sam Houston plus 10.5 against UNLV. We just saw these teams play in week 0. UNLV's defense is a dumpster fire. I don't know what Dan Mullen's doing out there, but he's not coaching. They need to take that defense and throw it in deep storage with the Rebel roller underneath Allegiant Stadium. It was the most atrocious thing I've ever seen against Idaho State. They missed 17 tackles. That's really hard to do. Like, Simon, we could get out there and have more tackles than what UNLV did the other day. Sam Houston has a semblance of an offense. I mean, I know they didn't cover against Western Kentucky, but they did push the ball up and down the field, very high yards per play, and they have an offensive identity with what Phil Longo has there. That number should be more like 5.5, not 10.5. So I like Sam Houston plus 10.5.
What I love about that, Stuck, we're going to get to yours next, is after the game, Dan Mullen was basically defensive. Like, someone said to him, how do you feel you won, but the team didn't play well? He goes, if you're not jumping up and down and celebrating after winning a game, what are you even doing? He's already dismissing the idea that there could be bad play and a win. Stuck, I think he's got somebody chirping in his ear, or Collin got somebody chirping in his ear. He sounds just like you.
Yep.
Stuckey, go ahead.
Yeah, I was low. I was very low on this UNLV team coming into the year. I have their win total under. I was really hoping that Idaho State could have pulled off the stunner, but that line took a ton of money too on UNLV, which was crazy. You'll see a lot of that in week 0, week 1 with a lot. This UNLV new roster. I mean, there's just transfers all over. You'll see crazy results, and then you'll also see the market get some right, and then the market be way off base on some of these games. I played what's still available here. By the way, Big Bets on Campus, if anyone's a new listener, we normally do episodes on Thursdays, previewing the whole slate. Then we have a recap episode. People can call into the voicemails, yell at us for bad picks. It's pretty funny and entertaining. Those come out on Sundays. But this week, special schedule, we'll have 2 episodes that we'll be recording tomorrow and Tuesday. One breaking down the games on Thursday and Friday night, and then a second part that breaks down the rest of the weekend. Want to get that out early for people since there are games on Thursday and Friday. It's Labor Day weekend, so just an FYI there on scheduling. I played this one. It still has some meat on the bone. It got hit today, this morning. The board was lit up, but Georgia State against Ole Miss. Anything over 35 is fine. I was talking to Collin about this on Saturday. I said it was 38, 38 and a half. I said this thing, I made it like 32-ish, I think. 31 and a half. So I was like, I think this is a touchdown too high. Now it is scary because it's Lane Kiffin going up against Georgia State. And if you looked at Ole Miss's results last year, Ole Miss destroyed these teams in weeks 1 through 4. But they didn't play anyone for like the first 4 weeks. They, on deck after this game, they have Kentucky, who beat them last year. Then another SEC game, Tulane. So I'm not sure how much he's going to want to just keep running it up and how much he wants to show in this particular spot. And I think Ole Miss, they should have been in the College Football Playoff last year. I mean, because they lost that Kentucky game and Lane Kiffin just has these head-scratching games. Their defense lost a ton. You lose Jackson Dart as well at quarterback. You lose your number 1 receiver. So this team, there's a lot of uncertainty, and I just think the number is too high. I think Georgia State can hang there. So I'll give out a trash one. Saturday night, Georgia State plus the points, anything over 5 touchdowns.
I know you got another one for me, Collin. What else we got for week 1, baby?
Rutgers team total over 31.5.
Love it.
Simon, go and get that. So Listen,
I got go across the state border, go get that one.
you have to get this one because I don't know if Ohio can score their points, right? They've got some issues with the offensive line I think might keep their offense from scoring some points, but Rutgers, no, they got this running back from FAU. He averages 4 yards after first contact. Offensive line returns four starters against an Ohio defensive line that lost everybody. They're fielding a bunch of JUCO guys, a bunch of guys that probably shouldn't be there from the MAC. And then you say, well, it's really important. Do head coaches take their foot off the pedal in week one? Shiano always has his foot on the pedal. Last year, again, in the second half alone against Howard and Akron, he scored 55 points. 2 years ago, he put up like 23 in the fourth quarter against Temple. Shiano just does not give a shit when he plays these little teams. He will keep scoring in every quarter, no matter what the score is. Rutgers team total over 31 and a half. They are going to have their way with that offensive line up and down the field.
You know,
Rutgers in that game also.
Stuck, he's talking about Rutgers and Shiano and not taking their foot off the gas. I don't know if I buy the theory that Lane Kiffin's going to slow his roll just because they've got games the following week that are a little bit more competitive.
I mean, probably not, but he might not show as much, and he might just get his starters out a tad bit earlier, which could matter. I mean, the my main handicap there is the line is just way too high compared to what I projected at. But there's a chance. I mean, if you look last year, Ole Miss, if you look at their schedule, they started out, and this will scare you. Like they started out, who did they beat? They beat someone like 70-0, I think. Hold on, let me pull up their schedule because it's definitely noteworthy and it's definitely something that I thought about. They beat Furman 76-0, and then they beat Middle Tennessee 52-3. They beat Wake 40-6. They beat Georgia Southern 52-13. And then guess what? They did all that against these just absolute horrendous teams. And then they hosted Kentucky in week one or in first game of their SEC schedule, and they lost as enormous favorites. So he'd probably be smart to maybe take a different approach this year. But basically, their week one last year against Furman, and then middle they didn't play anyone the first month, so they had nothing to really worry about or look forward to or hold back or worry about the start. So number one, it's a fair point by you because that's what Kiffin does. He's probably I'm gonna eat my words because they're gonna be up 34 with a minute to go, and he's going to be running no huddle and going for it on a fourth down. The main thing is I just think the line is too high here. And this year, unlike last year, there's things to be concerned about. You're at Kentucky next week, and then you play Arkansas and Tulane, and then LSU. It's a much different schedule structurally than last year, but you're probably right. But at the end of the day, the line's too high, in my opinion.
All right, well, what's your second pick then?
Let's go Va-Tech. This game is on Sunday afternoon, I believe, against South Carolina. I think South Carolina's defense is going to take an enormous step back this year. They lost a ton of talent to the NFL. In total, this is a team that had four defensive players drafted, I think, in like the top 80, 90 of the NFL draft. They lost a total of eight others that signed undrafted free agent contracts, and they had another one who was invited to a camp. So there was a big talent drain, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I think their defense takes a step back. I think this is just a good buy low. It's the year after all the hype with Va-Tech. Va-Tech was everybody's preseason darling last year. Everyone said they were the ACC sleeper to get to the college football playoff, and they had a disastrous year. There were injuries, coaching malpractice. I'm not necessarily the biggest Pride guy. This might be his last year. He's been a disaster in one possession games, which I think speaks to coaching when it's a trend over that long of a period. But if they lose a one possession game here, I don't care. Taking over a touchdown. I think that Va-Tech just not that this is like they lost a lot of talent too, but I loved their coordinator hires on both sides of the ball. Marv, their defensive coordinator last year, came from Florida State. He doesn't even have a job anywhere now. I think he was terrible on the defensive side of the ball last year. They hired this guy, Cephas, who came from the NFL. I think he's going to do wonders for this defense, and especially week one. I think he's going to confuse Sellers. He's going to confuse this offense. This is a guy who came from the Cardinal staff and the Viking staff over the past 4 years. With that Viking staff, that Cardinal staff, I have a ton of respect for. They're doing some awesome things with three high safeties. So I think that the coordinator hires here, drones being healthier. I think this is a good spot. Neutral field, taking over the touchdown, taking over 7 with Va-Tech. I think they're gonna have a shot to pull this out.
All right, Colin, got one more for me, boss.
Yeah, let's fade Hawaii. I've seen enough. I mean,
I
I
get it.
can't. Yeah, so this was a game like I was sitting in Chicago at the watch party, and I said, guys, I have Arizona like power rated like 24 over Hawaii, and the market right now is 13. I think I've got to hit this now because Hawaii could lay an egg. Well, Hawaii won the game, but look what the market's doing right now. It reopened at 14 and a half. It's up to 18, I think, today. I think it's good all the way up to 21 because Hawaii's quarterback right now, Mika Alahado, is, I mean, hobbled. Like, I mean, he was taped up, looked like a transformer out there running around with his boot. Like, he was hobbling in between snaps. I think he's going to have zero mobility. They're flying in to play Arizona. I think the hate on Arizona has been really uncalled for. I think Brent Brennan is a fantastic coach. I think they had a Dino Babers problem, which they don't have right now. Stuckey knows that there is an advantage for teams playing in week one against teams that already played in week zero against the spread because they have so much more film. And this kind of falls into that area too. So I like Arizona all the way up to 21. I think it's going to zoom past this current number 17 and a half, 18.
All right, Stock, taking us home, the final best bet for college football week one.
Yeah, historically, for what it's worth, over 60% against the spread for FBS, just FBS teams, taking out FCS, FBS teams that are making their debut in week one. Very unique. It's not like the NFL where everyone starts in 1 week. 61% since 2005, teams that are making their debut against teams that played the week prior. I think there's only 2 spots this week because a lot of teams are playing FCS. There's Stanford as a bye. And I think that's who are the 2 teams here? We have Georgia Southern will play Fresno. They're catching, I think they're just like a 1 point dog, but I would lean that way there. And then, yeah, this line has been hit, but especially with the injury uncertainty at quarterback for Hawaii, it'd be Arizona hosting Hawaii, and Hawaii has not been good on the road under Timmy Chang. And the handicap there is yes, you get what means more. You get to shake off the rust, work out the kinks, or you have the film and the rest and the non-travel advantage, right? You get to see what, and with all the turnover in college football, these teams could look a lot different. You get to see what they look like, and you get to hold some things back, and they don't know what you're going to look like, and you're rested and didn't have to travel. There's no injuries. So historically, that has won over the team that got to work out some of the kinks and get out the rust. I'll give you one. I give you one Saturday, Sunday. How about Friday? Um, there's still some sevens out there with Charlotte. So Charlotte against App State. Lot of uncertainty with both of these rosters. When this is the case, and I show a little bit of value on the spread with the dog here, coach, I don't like the App State coach hire. I love the Charlotte coaching hire. That to me, big edge in week one. So yeah, Friday night, 7 Eastern on ESPNU. Let's go with Charlotte catching seven. Seven out there, a couple books right now.
We've done it all, fellas. Texas, Ohio State, futures, week one, best bets. Thank you, Stuckey. Thank you, Collin. BBOC bosses. Don't forget to check out Big Bets on Campus. Get it on Apple, Spotify. Check out the Big Bets on Campus YouTube channel. The favorites will be back with our next episode Thursday on the Action Network YouTube page. We're going to talk NFL best bets for the 2025 season. Download us from Spotify, Apple Pods, wherever you get your pods. Rate, review, subscribe. Leave us 5 stars. Say whatever you want. Feedback is a gift. Until next time, love you.